Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. That was an interesting conversation that we just had with Diana Mack. She is a professor in real estate finance at Guelph University, was at Western University, and she's written a really interesting article about some of the challenges associated with building housing. It's been a real issue, provincially, municipally, federally, in the last little while. And I wonder why people have only started to pay attention of it of late. It's been a growing issue for a long period of time. Scott Galloway was on The Current on CBC. He's a podcaster. He's a business professor in New York. He's a very successful author. And he said the problem is that young people today have lost confidence in a prosperous future. And he really calls into question. He said that the problem is fueled by young people's exclusion from the prosperity of previous generations and having that prosperity shoved in their face every day by social media. We've got a real problem here, and we've got to sit up, stand up, and address it. We are the first generation in history that is giving the following generation, our own kids, a worse future than was given to us. Every other generation in history has provided to the following generation a better future. And why are we not doing so? It's for a few reasons. Number one is housing. And what we have is this principle of exclusion that too many people have, that, we've got the doctor's license or the lawyer's licenses or the, whatever it is. And we went to the good schools, and we don't want a whole bunch of other people to have those licenses so that the benefits of having those restricted opportunities remain with us. And we built up this net worth in our homes that we don't want to have diminished. And so therefore we don't want to have more homes. We don't want to have extra capacity. And we end up being NIMBYs and challenging every development that takes place, such that today we're building the same number of homes in Canada as we were in 1970. Think about that. The same number of homes as we were building in 1970, and yet the population has gone up by twofold, 2.5-fold. And it's illusionary, this net worth that we've created, because if we build up this net worth and the housing prices go up by 100%, when we want to sell that house and move into a condo or move to something else, their bid up is just to the same. So we're taking paper profits, realizing them, and then investing something else that's also dramatically overvalued. There's no windfall here. There's no huge profit here. The only way that you get a windfall is when you die, then you got to pay capital gains tax, and the money goes to the next generation. And they've got to spend the money buying something that's way overpriced. So inflation in housing is illusionary, even though we've grabbed onto it and think it's fantastic. And we restrict the balance of supply elsewhere in the community such that we keep that net worth up. And we are giving our kids a worse future. And there's other issues. There's debt that is at astronomical levels. There is property taxes that are too high. There is infrastructure that is underinvested in. And I could go on. Prosperity and productivity in Canada, in Ontario, in Mississauga is a significant issue. And a lot of it, I think, comes down to regulation and red tape. And a lot of that regulation and red tape is squarely at the feet of our municipal governments. I posted this post on April the 1st saying that I was going to run for mayor of Mississauga. And I got an incredible amount of positive feedback, encouraging me to actually thinking about doing it. And lots of people reached out saying, what we need is change, dramatic change, that they feel that Mississauga, that other places, not just Mississauga, have lost their way and aren't going the way that it should go. And people really resonated with my call for intergenerational equity, where we can hopefully give a good, if not a better future to our children, and that housing ends up being the problem more than almost anything else. And that rules, regulation, red tape have been the cause of that slow approval, lack of housing, lower supply, etc. And then this week, like probably many of you, if you live in Mississauga, I got brochures from two of the candidates. I was I'd like to say I was shocked, but I wasn't. I was disappointed and dismayed that number one, both candidates have been on council, one for a long period of time, one for a while. And as if they took no ownership and responsibility for the catastrophe that they've created or the problems that they've created. There's that line about rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, and I wonder about that. Yesterday, I had Dan Donovan, editor and publisher of Ottawa Life magazine, on my show, and he said that our city politics, our municipal politicians, and not them themselves, but the process. He used colorful language. I apologize about this. If you don't like colorful languages, I kind of like it because it really describes it well. He said they need an enema. We need an enema, that we've got to fix things up. Miller, when he came to the Mayoralty in Toronto, talked about, sweeping clean the problems. And I wonder if that's what we really need, is an attitude of change so radical, so dramatic, that we get rid of all the problems. And yet the people that are running, and clearly what the polls say, the leading candidates to win, are people that have been there, causing the problems. And is that the way to solve a problem? Is that the solution? I'll just mention a couple of the things I'm reading from the brochure here, that someone who's on council now, running for mayor, says we need to cut red tape and speed up approvals. Yeah, well, why didn't you do it? Do we need to build more homes? Yeah, well, why didn't you do it? Do we need to freeze property taxes for all? Well, you just approved the budget with a huge increase, buddy. Lower property tax for seniors. Like, where do you get off? Why don't you take responsibility for what you've done? And it's astounding to me that we can have so many issues, so many problems. I met with a counselor from the city of Toronto today, and he talked to me about, crime and how crime has gone up like crazy in Toronto, but at least we're not as bad as Mississauga and Brampton, he said. That car theft is rampant, and that he said the only solution is number one, close down the Port of Montreal to all used cars. And he went through a bunch of the statistics in regards to crime and how it's escalated, and how we've got to fund the police even more, and neighborhood watches even more, and how home invasions and burglaries and car thefts have gone crazy. I don't see people talking about crime. In my neighborhood, there's been numerous burglaries. So much so that the local neighborhood has created a neighborhood watch that they're posting on Facebook and a group all the time about suspicious cars. They have lost faith in the local police department to take care of problems. And the local police department reports to the region, to the city councilors. And the city councilors and the mayor sit on the police board. What has gone wrong? And they talk about transit. We've been talking about all day two-way go for 20, 25 years, and it hasn't happened. Federal government's committed money. Provincial government's committed money. We have not made it happen. Why? And then he went on about the Eglinton Crosstown and how it was a complete debacle, and the procurement process and the lack of leadership and the lack of oversight was the problem. He said municipalities needed to get involved, and the provincial government said, back off. We don't want you involved, but they wanted to demand. I tell you, I'm really worried about this Huron-Ontario LRT. And is it going to be anywhere close to what has happened on Eglinton? I really worry about the future of Mississauga and these crises that I mentioned. I think we've got a housing crisis. I think we've got a red tape regulation and rules crisis. I think we've got a crime crisis. I think we've got a lack of vision crisis. I think we've got a governance, maybe not crisis, but real issue, where we were distracted for a year and a half on a silly thing that ruined the UK with Brexit and ruined, potentially would have ruined Canada if separation had gone through, is this populist idea of potentially separating, when really what is needed is more collaboration and cooperation and working together to find efficiencies and lower taxes. And yet the people that are currently running are the people that were there. Doesn't that worry you too? Worries me. We're going to take a break, and I'm going to come back with a couple comments that were made to me when I made this announcement last week, because I found it really quite interesting and encouraging. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. You know, this week I've had a couple of really interesting interviews about municipal issues. On Monday, I had Sabina Matheson, who is General Counsel, Senior Partner with Strategy Corp, and she was the moderator at the Urban Land Institute dinner recently for all the city planners from the GTA. And she talked about how critically important housing was and how red tape regulation was the issue. I talked to a city planner from Markham, who actually happens to live in Mississauga, who talked about how we failed as a level of government in cities where the city politicians didn't have the guts to tell people that we needed to build housing, that we needed to streamline the approval process. We quoted Jane Jacobs, who talked about authoritarian attitudes of building expressways wherever governments wanted them to go was the wrong way to do it, but also it was over zoning was the wrong way to go, where zoning was put in place initially to make sure that industry wasn't beside homes, but we've taken zoning way farther than it ever was meant to be, where we influence how many bike racks they have and how many parking spots they have and what's the materials that they make and whether they can have a balcony or not. And the red tape and regulation in housing just adds huge amount of time, red tape, risk to the process, such that the prices of houses go up fairly dramatically. The time to get approval goes up. The interest clock keeps on ticking, and we don't build the housing. And Sabina left it at the responsibility at the feet of city government. And then I had yesterday Dan Donovan, editor and publisher of Ottawa Life magazine, who was similarly critical of city governments and the need for new leadership and the need for non-career politicians and people from the business community, less lawyers, less career politicians in politics generally, but particularly in city government. And he mentioned that city government is one of the most important places to have that skill base, because you're closest to the services, the infrastructure, the stormwater, the wastewater, the water, the natural gas, the electricity, the garbage pickup, the police, the fire, all those services, planning that ends up being so critical to our society. And yet we elect people that have been a career politician, and we have low turnout and we seemingly don't care. And yet I guess we get the government we deserve. And I've become incredibly discouraged by these pamphlets I've received from current councillors that are running for mayor, where they don't take responsibility for the problems they've got, and they think they're going to solve everything that they caused. It just seems absurd to me. Anyway, I made this announcement on April Fool's Day, and I got an incredible amount of positive response. And I want to read you one letter that I got that was incredibly well written, and I think it exemplifies some of the responses I got. Hi, Brian. It has been a while. I hope you are well. I was thrilled to receive your announcement regarding your candidacy for Mayor of Mississauga. Your passion for the city and your vision for positive change are truly inspiring. As a Canadian, I deeply resonate with your commitment to the well-being and progress of the community in Mississauga. Your extensive involvement in various civic roles and your impressive corporate career highlight the breadth of experience and expertise you bring to the table. I wholeheartedly share your belief that fresh perspectives are crucial to the city's continued growth and success. Your decision to offer a new approach untethered to the current council reflects a bold and forward-thinking mindset that our city needs now more than ever. As you rightly pointed out, the challenges facing Mississauga are pressing and multifaceted. From addressing the housing crisis and affordability challenges to tackling transportation issues and fostering visionary leadership, there is much work to be done. I believe that with your leadership, innovative ideas, and commitment to collaborative problem solving, we can overcome these challenges and shape a brighter future for Mississauga. I'm ready to express my full support for your mayoral candidacy and to offer my assistance in any way possible. Whether it's volunteering for your campaign, spreading the word among friends and colleagues, or providing input on key issues, please know that I'm eager to contribute to your journey in any way that I can. I am confident that your leadership, integrity, and dedication to Mississauga will thrive and prosper. Thank you for stepping up to the challenge, and I look forward to standing by your side as you work towards making our city an even better place to live, work, and thrive. Looking forward to catching up with you soon. Best regards. Here are some of the social media posts that I got. Way to go. Victory soon. All the best, Brian. What a vibrant mayor you'd make. Brian, I couldn't have asked for a better mayor. You'll get my vote. You would win. I guarantee it. You got my vote. Thumbs up. Good move. Good luck. Fresh ideas is what the city needs, and less hurdles, more action, less needless staff reports. You know, I was tickled pink with getting that email, letter, the other posts, the positive calls that I've got where people have asked me to come over to talk about it. And it was just a April Fool's announcement. But it got me thinking. I think people really want some change here. People really are, I think, disappointed with where we are. And they take a look at the housing crisis and they wonder why we're losing out on federal government money, why we're losing out on provincial government money, why we're not building the housing that we should be building. And if we're building that housing, but we're going to get congestion, why aren't we building the transit and the infrastructure that we need to deal with this? Because we know that that's there. And they don't want to have a Mississauga that is only for the upper middle class or the rich. They want a Mississauga that's for everybody, that it was in the past, that allowed people to live the Mississauga dream. But we've robbed our young people of that opportunity, that dream of owning a house in Mississauga with a pool and a backyard, even if it's a above ground pool made out of rubber. We want that pool. We want that relaxation. We want that good time. And we've priced too many people out of the marketplace. I had Michelle Billick on talking about homeless and how homeless have gone up dramatically. And I mentioned it to this counselor from Toronto that I met with today, that 80% of the people that are homeless have got mental health issues. And he said, yes, Brian, and we're reducing our funding, and it's a tragedy. That's where we've got to spend some money. And crime has escalated dramatically. And what have we spent our time thinking about? Number one, about the separation of Mississauga from Brampton, which was a complete distraction for a while. And number two, political races, our own political dreams and objectives, rather than who we're supposed to serve, our own citizens. And, you know, it really bothers me that current councillors are not resigning and running for mayor. It would not be appropriate. They wouldn't be allowed to run for council and the mayor at the same time if it was a general election. So why can they do it now when there's a by-election? One of the candidates has resigned, such that there's a by-election at the same time, rather than, if that person wins, forcing to have a by-election later on. I think, frankly, any candidate that is running for mayor that doesn't resign now, ahead of time, should be ruled ineligible to run. In a general election, they would be ruled ineligible. So why is it appropriate now? And I really wonder about whether giving the responsibility to the people that have created the problem and have sat on council and have been part of creating the crises that we have today are the right people to give the responsibility, the chains of office to try to solve the problem. They'll have name awareness. They'll have the power of incumbency. They've got the fundraising lists, and they'll get a big head start. But is that democracy? And is that the right decision? I wonder. Anyway, thanks for joining me. That's Brian Crombie for the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. Please wonder with me, do we need more radical change in Mississauga? I think so.